Once you learn how to evaluate income opportunities, decision-making becomes calmer and more deliberate over time. Build, buy, or ignore sounds simple, yet most people choose incorrectly when pressure replaces structural clarity. They treat opportunities as interchangeable, even though their demands and long-term behavior differ significantly. This video explains how to choose actions that align with structure, timing, and available personal capacity. Wrong decisions rarely fail in dramatic or obvious ways at the beginning of the process. They fail quietly by consuming time, attention, and emotional energy without producing stability. Weeks or months pass before the true cost becomes visible to the person involved. By then, momentum is lost and confidence is already weakened by repeated friction. Most people default to action because action feels responsible and emotionally reassuring in uncertain situations. Building feels productive even when clarity about structure and outcomes is missing. Buying feels decisive even when understanding of long-term behavior remains shallow. Ignoring feels uncomfortable because it appears passive and contradicts urgency-driven thinking. Building is appropriate when usable structure does not yet exist within a specific opportunity. If something requires original design, coordination, or system creation, building may be necessary. This includes creating workflows, integrations, or processes that cannot be purchased externally. Building always carries the highest cost in time, attention, and ongoing mental load. The common mistake is building far earlier than conditions actually justify. People build before evaluating structural behavior or long-term sustainability. Complexity increases before stability has been achieved or tested properly. The result is fragile systems that depend heavily on constant personal involvement. Buying is appropriate when structure already exists and has been tested under real conditions. Buying exchanges capital for time and avoids early design mistakes made by others. This allows progress without rebuilding known solutions from the beginning. The primary risk shifts from execution toward selection and ongoing oversight responsibility. Buying does not eliminate responsibility or involvement after the transaction is completed. It changes the type of responsibility the buyer must manage over time. Assets still require alignment, monitoring, and occasional correction to perform properly. Without oversight, even strong systems slowly degrade and lose effectiveness. Ignoring is the most misunderstood option among income decision choices. It feels passive but often requires the highest level of discipline. Ignoring protects focus and prevents unnecessary disruption of existing momentum. Many opportunities are acceptable, yet misaligned with current direction and priorities. Most long-term regret comes from saying yes too frequently and too early. Complexity increases without producing better outcomes or greater stability. Systems never mature because direction keeps shifting between opportunities. Ignoring allows existing structures to compound without constant interruption. A simple decision rule is identifying what the opportunity requires first. If it requires original design, building may be appropriate at that moment. If it requires capital, buying may be the correct approach. If it requires unavailable attention, ignoring is usually the best choice. Most income paths fail early through friction rather than sudden collapse. Pressure appears where structure should already exist. Energy drains before progress begins to feel stable or repeatable. These signals indicate misalignment rather than insufficient effort or discipline. Reversibility is another powerful signal when making income decisions. Building is difficult to reverse once resources and attention are committed. Buying is moderately reversible depending on liquidity and resale conditions. Ignoring remains fully reversible and preserves future optionality. Experienced builders intentionally delay irreversible decisions whenever uncertainty remains high. They gather information quietly before committing resources. They protect flexibility while evaluating long-term behavior and risks. This approach reflects structural intelligence rather than hesitation or fear. Time horizon strongly influences which decision is most appropriate. Building pays later and requires patience and tolerance for delay. Buying pays sooner but requires skill in selection and integration. Ignoring pays immediately by preserving focus and reducing pressure. Stress often arises from choosing actions that conflict with the current time horizon. People build when they need short-term relief. They buy when they lack understanding and context. They ignore when forward movement is actually required. This framework replaces emotional reaction with structural fit assessment. Fit between opportunity, capacity, and timing determines long-term experience. Correct fit reduces pressure and stabilizes progress naturally. Incorrect fit creates exhaustion regardless of income potential. This decision logic connects directly to dependency discussed earlier in the series. Building increases dependency during early stages. Buying shifts dependency towards selection and integration responsibilities. Ignoring removes dependency entirely for the moment. There is no universally correct choice for every situation. Different people should act differently on the same opportunity. Context determines the correct action more than intelligence or ambition. Structure always matters more than imitation of others. This explains why copying strategies rarely produces consistent results. People copy actions without understanding the decision logic behind them. Context differences distort outcomes dramatically over time. Structure cannot be borrowed without consequence or adjustment. Once this framework becomes clear, urgency begins to fade naturally. Opportunities stop feeling like threats or rare chances. They become neutral inputs for evaluation and sorting. Calm replaces pressure during income-related decision-making. Patterns emerge after repeated use of this decision framework. You recognize which situations consistently reward building. You recognize which situations reward buying instead. You recognize which situations should always be ignored. Decision speed increases without rushing or emotional strain. Fewer corrections are required later in the process. Energy is preserved instead of constantly recovered. Momentum becomes stable rather than reactive or emotional. Most people never learn this distinction because they remain constantly busy. Activity feels safer than judgment or evaluation. Movement replaces clarity as a coping mechanism, but clarity always precedes sustainable action and progress. This framework also protects confidence over long periods of building. Progress is measured by alignment rather than constant movement. Emotional cycles become less extreme and disruptive. Consistency replaces urgency as the dominant experience. Opportunities lose power once they are properly categorized. They stop interrupting direction and focus. Attention remains intact across long periods of time. Systems improve through stability rather than reaction. Ambition is not reduced by this structured approach. It becomes sharper and more selective. Effort concentrates where it compounds over time. Results improve without increasing pressure or exhaustion. The next question becomes unavoidable at this stage. How do you know when a system is ready to scale responsibly? Scaling too early introduces fragility and hidden risk. That distinction defines the next layer of judgment.